especially our two fabulous authors. We went to some trouble to arrange for them to come together. Is this the first time that you two have shown up as a pair?
Here.
Mm-hmm. You have to use microphones, guys, or it just doesn't work.
Here. Yes.
I thought it was, over the years, both of them. I mean, Kent's been here for every one of his books. Jeff has been here for nearly every one of his books, back in the day when he published before we really got to be a bookstore. You didn't come, but since then. And they've been with other people, but I didn't think I remembered that you'd ever been here at the same time.
No, we haven't. This is the first. It's the first.
I think every event I've done with you that has been a two-author event has been with Margaret. I think.
Margaret Cole.
Margaret Cole.
It might, and she doesn't have a new book for the first time. Margaret
know.
Cole stopped writing.
Jeff, I like you, but I miss Margaret.
Yeah.
Well, now, just before we get going, I can say this. Craig Johnson, who is with us a week from Saturday, is planning on a trip to Phoenix on February 17th, just for the hell of it. And he asked me to organize something that would be fun. So I'm thinking of inviting Margaret to come. If you're back in Sedona,
Perfect.
February 17th is a really good day to come here from, Minnesota.
Will you fly me out?
Well, I haven't gotten that far, but we've been mulling over.
No, if you put together a big shindig, I would be on board.
It might be really fun.
Yeah.
We could do it in the parking lot, or we could do it, there's a lot of opportunities in February. Don't work out terribly well when it's 109, right? So there we are. Anyway, that's where we're going. So, Kent, this is which number?
Number 16. I lose count too.
Well, you've written other books. So
This is number 18, my 18th published novel,
Right.
number 16 of my Corco comic
So
series.
you wrote one that involved, was it a vice president? It was a thriller.
It was a thriller. It was called The Devil's Bed.
Right.
What in the business we call a standalone thriller.
Right.
Yes.
Meaning those characters hadn't shown up before, and so far haven't shown up again.
Ah.
Right. No spoiler there.
Things are on the horizon.
Oh, okay. And then you wrote Ordinary Grace, which won every award possible.
Yeah.
And at some point, you were actually talking about writing a follow-up to Ordinary Grace. Is that materialized?
Oh, there's a long story there. I signed a contract for it and spent 2 years trying to write it, and it wasn't good. So I told my publisher, we're not going to publish this.
Yeah.
And we renegotiated things, so I'm back on track with a much better manuscript. I'm 2 years into it. I just finished the manuscript for number 17 in the Cork O'Connor series, Desolation Mountain. It'll be out next year. And then I turn all of my attention to completing the companion novel to Ordinary Grace, which will be called This Tender Land. And God willing, it's scheduled for publication in fall of 2019.
Wonderful. It's nice. I mean, when you get up to 18 books, you can recognize if you've written one that just isn't working out. Okay.
Oh, this one wasn't hard. I'm a good writer. I really am. I'm a pretty good writer, folks. So it wasn't like an absolute horrible piece of crap. It's just, and you know this, Jeff, sometimes a story just doesn't come together in the way that you imagined it might, and it's not satisfying. It's just not satisfying, and I didn't want to put something out there that I was disappointed. I knew my publisher would publish it, but if I was disappointed in it, I knew it was going to disappoint readers, and I didn't want to have something out there like that with my name on it. So we pulled it.
What did you do with the pages? You're working on it again. It's going to be in 2019. So is it a whole new book compared to the one that you decided you didn't want to publish?
Yes, it is an entire. So because of Ordinary Grace has done really well. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I proposed the story to my publisher, they told me they didn't want it because it wasn't a Cork O'Connor novel. And so when I wrote it, I knew it was going to be kind of a risky proposition. I didn't know if anybody was going to want it. But I sent it to my editor when it was finished, and she fell in love with it, and they went ahead and published it, and it has received this just wonderful, gratifying reception. So much so that my publisher was really anxious to have the follow-up novel. I signed a contract, they paid me a shitload of money, and, oh, can I say that?
Too late.
And so there were all these expectations on my shoulders about what this follow-up novel was going to be. It was going to be the, next Ordinary Grace. And under that weight, I just couldn't work. I really just couldn't work. But as soon as we decided, hey, this is a piece of poop. We can say that on camera, right?
You can say anything you want. I feel that we have an adult audience that's rated out there, so.
As soon as we all agreed that we wouldn't publish this, oh man, it was like this huge, huge weight off my shoulders. And you know what happened was the sky cleared. And I saw the story I should have been writing. And that's what I've been at work on for the last 2 years. And it's good. This time it's good. I feel really good about it.
So you wouldn't know anything about rejection or publishers not wanting the book you're writing, would you?
Oh, I've had a lot of publishers in my day. I'll say that. You know, I've moved a few times in order to write the books that I wanted to write. Yeah.
And this one, which starts a new series, is really doing brilliantly. It's kind of like Ordinary Grace of the PI world. It's
doing fine. The buzz has been good. The reviews have been good. It's called The Room of White Fire. I think some of you guys have it. Yeah, it's my very first PI novel. I've always wanted to write one, and this is my chance. It's going to be a series. I'm now working to conclude the second book. The private eye's name is Roland Ford. He lives and works in a little agricultural village north of San Diego, which is where I live, Fallbrook, California, which is known as the avocado capital of the world, if you're interested. Yeah. And so, yeah, I've launched a series. Yeah.
But it builds on, it seems to me, the two standalone books you've written over the past 2 years, which also involved somebody coming back from battle, generally damaged somewhat, and one of them, it had trees, but I can't remember, was it avocado?
Yes,
it was avocado, right. So those were, as Kent would say, standalones, but did it sort of help you decide to write about Roland?
Yeah, they did. Before Roland published two standalones that were both about, as Barbara said, young men who have come back from combat. And I think I moved to my little avocado village in the year 2000, so I've been there 17 years now. And Fallbrook, the name of the place, directly abuts Camp Pendleton. So starting in 2000, I began meeting and talking to these young Marines coming and going to war. They're there at the Albertsons and the Shell Station. Everywhere I went, there they were. So I talked to them, and I got to know some of them, and I did some interviews. And I really came to believe, through meeting them and through reading the papers about what they had been through and just kind of paying attention to our America, I came to firmly believe that our long-standing war in the Middle East, beginning after 9/11, is the story of our time thus far as a nation. Not just as a nation, not just we who sit back and read about it, but these people who we send over to execute our plans. And so I've written about combat guys, women and men in war, a lot. And one of the things that Roland Ford, my PI, he's a veteran. He served honorably in First Fallujah, and he comes from a family where service is expected. He's kind of a Navy brat, but he gets out and he goes on with his life. I think the stories of those people returning from war are beautiful and tragic and powerful, almost always. The guys I talk to anyway. So I'm writing about them.
Yeah, it's a PI novel, and it's classic in many ways. The first-person narrative, the damaged hero, the hero who comes with baggage, with things he continues to work on. Beautiful backstory here, but Jesus, Jeff, it's so much more. You really took on a huge issue, and you took it on just straight on. You didn't pull any punches. There's some parts of this book that are difficult and eye-opening to read. I found myself just going, Oh my God, really? Oh, so
That's
could you
so cool to hear.
Yeah,
So
could
cool
you
to
talk
hear.
about, if you would,
Want to
could you
go on
talk-
tour with me?
Oh, this is the start of a beautiful relationship, isn't it? Yes.
Well, I found myself going, how did you research this sucker?
Oh man, well, you know,
I mean, the stuff I'm talking about here, all of the Black Ops stuff, the torture
Yeah.
stuff.
yeah, the world got the weird little words started to sizzle up in my world around 2004 or 5, a few years into Afghanistan and Iraq, and those words were black sites. It's a black site, you know. Secret prisons, you know, being written about in the LA Times. How secret were they, you know? And my favorite, you know, enhanced interrogation techniques. And that just made my scalp crawl when I started hearing these things, because you couldn't get much information then, but you can get it now. Thanks to the United States Senate and a whole lot of other people, you can really find out what really happened back then. And there are a lot of books that have been written by people who participated in those programs and what it did to them, what they did, and what that doing did to them. Blogs, books, articles. There's a lot out there if you care to find out about it. So I spent a lot of time reading and talking to people. Yeah.
Nightmares?
Yeah, that's serious stuff. It's horrible stuff. You want to take a hot shower as soon as you're done with your work day. You really do. You feel touched and scared, and it's funny about lifting, you know, wounds. You know, lifting the scab on wounds or the bandage on wounds. You know, sometimes it needs to be done, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's really hard as an author. I think you might agree to know sometimes what people really can benefit from. And so I thought a lot of this stuff was really quite dark, although quite true. And I thought that in my heart of hearts, I thought that this was information that would be well used by you readers if it was dramatized properly and if the fiction was good. So I tried to shine a bright fictional light into a very dark little corner of our history.
And we haven't even touched on this yet. There's a tremendous wellspring of grief in this book because Roland has lost his wife, a pilot, and they flew together. That was part of their relationship. So part of the time he's up in the air thinking about, you know...
He's up in the air a lot, metaphorically, as well.
Nonetheless, you know, in you're creating a character and giving them, you know, a backstory and a skill set and so forth. Grief is a tremendous impetus, I think, to the narrative.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, when you create a character, you got to have a PI, especially Action Man. You know, you got to have a portfolio of skills that he can take forward into his investigations. You know, so he's a physical. Roland's a big, physical, fast, young, 38 years old, capable guy, former Marine, former sheriff's deputy. He's kind of an action man, but he's got a conscience, and he's smart, and he's cool. His backstory is in many ways parallel to mine. I lost my first wife tragically. We were young, and it wasn't an accident; it was cancer. But that loss and that time informs a lot of what I write and what I do, because it was a huge part of my life. You know, and I think that I've chosen to write about that disguised in my book as different, you know, disguised, but still about that. Because I think that everybody, if you live long enough, it happens. It happens to all of us. You know, we're all going to lose somebody. If we haven't already, we probably have. I mean, it's going to happen. So I'm not unique, but it just, you know, when something strikes you that clearly, and you have you know, typing paper and a typewriter available, and you're bent like Kent and I are, you write it. You got it. Yeah.
You know, one of the other things that I loved about this is you created a rich terrain of adjunct characters that surround Roland, and that I'm looking forward to exploring more. They were fun.
Oh, good.
They were fun to be with.
Good. Roland has this great big mansion that he's inherited from his wife, who died in the plane wreck. Her fabulously wealthy family gave it to them as a wedding present. It's a centuries-old hacienda in the hills of avocado country, north San Diego County, and it's a beautiful but crumbling place. And there's 6 casitas on the property, and a lake, and a pond and barn and outbuildings, and as well as this crumbling old house. And we learn just a few pages into in the Room of White Fire that Roland has rented these 6 casitas out to people. One's empty, but he's got 5 tenants. And we see that the reason that he rents to these people isn't because he needs the money, it's because he finds them amusing and he's kind of lonely. He doesn't have anybody to talk to. It's sort of his family. And he dubs them affectionately the irregulars. And people seem to like the irregulars. I'm glad you do too. Just a quirky bunch of people I put in for just kind of for comic relief, but at the end of the book they actually contribute to.
And they surprise
story.
Roland.
Yeah. It was kind of cool to call on him. I didn't foresee any of that. I'm sure you've written a lot of books where you put people in, characters in, you create situations that you're not really sure why. There's just some little voices telling you that you have to have this character or this scene in there, and it may not become clear until the very end of that book why your self-conscious prodded you into doing that. Does that happen?
Yes.
Yes.
So, while grief is a really powerful force in Room of White Fire, fear is an enormous force in Sulfur Springs. Tremendous force. The fear of 2 parents about what might be going on with their child. And they're newlyweds, so there's also fear that their relationship may fracture over this, which happens very often to parents of children who are missing, dead, or damaged. So,
do you want me to elaborate on this? I would be happy to elaborate on this.
I think it's a very powerful part of Sulfur Springs.
I think there's a lot in Sulfur Springs that is, is powerful. So, for those of you who have no idea what Sulfur Springs is about, here it is. Here's the down and dirty. Sulfur Springs opens in the 3rd month of Cork O'Connor's marriage to his second wife, Rainey Bissonette. And he still feels at the beginning as if he's kind of on a honeymoon. But for those of you who are married or have been married, you know that the first few months of any marriage can be enlightening, you know? So Cork is still learning things about this new wife of his. On the 4th of July, Rainey Bissonette receives a voicemail from her son Peter, who is living in Arizona. The message is garbled, but what Cork and Rainey are able to discern is that Peter's killed a man and he needs their help. So they shoot down to southern Arizona, but when they get to Sulfur Springs, the small town where Peter has been living, nobody there claims to know anything about him. As they dig deeper and deeper into the mystery of his vanishing, they find themselves drawn into the conflict that is going on along our border with Mexico. It's a conflict that involves the refugees, the undocumented immigrants who are coming across the border seeking refuge. It's a conflict that involves the predators, those dark souls that are preying on those poor people, those refugees, and it involves forces on both sides of the border who are trying to keep those people from coming here. And as the tension mounts, Cork begins to suspect more and more that Rainey is keeping secrets from him, secrets about her past, secrets that in the end may prove lethal to them both. Ooh, it's a good story.
You're really hard on the women in Cork's life. I mean, his first wife died in terrible and tragic circumstances. For those of you who've read the series, you know what I'm speaking of. And now here we are again.
Yeah. I'm in therapy for this part, but I want you to know that.
You've been married to Diane forever, so his wife actually comes with him sometimes. Is it symbolic that she's not here tonight?
Not in the least.
Oh, really?
She loves coming to this store. She loves being a part of
Well, I know that you guys spent some time in Sedona last spring. And were you polishing up your knowledge of Arizona for this book? Or?
I didn't do it then. Oh, can I talk about the research for this book for just a moment? I loved doing the research for Sulfur Springs. So Sulfur Springs is set in the Sonoran Desert, and when I came to do the research for it, I brought with me, because I didn't know southern Arizona really, I brought with me a lot of preconceived notions about what the desert down there was going to be like. Most of them formed as a result of watching a lot of Roadrunner Coyote cartoons, you know?
Really deep research.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So in my imagination, I wanted Cork out there in this desert. So the story takes place in the middle of July in the Sonoran Desert, and And so I had imagined, I never write a story without having gone to the place where the story is set in the season in which the story is set. So I can write believably about the place. I try to create a profound sense of place there. So in my imagining, I thought about Cork. Oh, I'm going to put him out there in the desert in July, and the sun's going to bake his brain, and his lips are going to be all cracked, and his skin is going to be black and peeling, and I'm going to have fun with this. So we get down there. We arrive, my wife and my grandson and I fly into Phoenix. When we get off the plane, it's like 110 degrees here, middle of July. We go down to Tucson, and as you go south, it gets a little cooler, so it was about 108 in Tucson. And it was that way for two, maybe 3 days. And then, that meteorological phenomenon that everybody who lives in Southern California knows occurred. The monsoons hit. Southern Arizona gets most of its water in July. Go figure. So suddenly, every afternoon, the sky is clouded over, and the wind has picked up, and there's lightning everywhere, and the rain is coming down in these torrential sheets, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I didn't expect this. But if I wanted to write about Southern Arizona believably in the season in which it was set, I had to figure out a way to incorporate the monsoons, and as it turned out, it was really a wonderful technique for me whenever I needed to isolate Cork, because if the Southern Arizona, there's mountains everywhere, and there are hills like this, and every time you crest a hill, there's a sign that says, "Do not enter when flooding, do not enter when flooding, do not enter when flooding." So whenever I needed to isolate Cork, I just had rains coming. We couldn't go anywhere.
You have raised a really interesting point. Rob and I decided to take this weird route to Santa Fe. So we drove from here, from Globe, down to Safford, Arizona, where I'd never been before. So now we're heading down south. Cotton, we figure out, is what they're growing. And then we drove the road from Safford up to Alpine that goes through all the strip mining area, Morenci and the whole bit. But it's all mountains and it's all dips. And as you say, you keep coming to us, do not enter when flooded. And I said to Rob, so if every mile, what do you do? I mean, do you just park?
What do you do?
Because you can't go back because it's going to flood, and you can't go forward because it's going to flood. So what do? You just sit on the road and wait?
Yeah, wait for the people who are trying to kill you, because they'll come eventually. That's what Cork does.
It really is.
It's a good question.
It really struck
But people who live down there understand all of this, and so they don't find
They just
themselves
don't go
in
out
that
at all,
situation.
right?
You got
Yeah,
it.
or they have a four-wheel that's like
Yeah.
this far.
Yeah.
Yes.
But even big trucks get swept away, so it's dangerous stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, I derailed you, but carry on. So you're
I
down
can't
there,
remember where we were.
you were isolating Cork by having the rains stop him every time you.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. But the other thing was, so I deal a lot with the issue of immigration, the undocumented immigrants who are coming across the border. And so I brought my grandson with me, my 11-year-old grandson, to do this research. So, I'm out there. I'm out there following the trails that the drug smugglers and the immigrants often follow, with these signs out there that say, "Warning, drug smuggling area, you could be killed." And there I am with my 11-year-old grandson, wondering, what the hell am I doing? And he went everywhere I went, and he was involved in every interview I did. Before I went down, I tried several times to contact the Border Patrol folks in the office in Tucson. Never got a response from them. So what I did was I went down to Southern Arizona, and I went onto the back roads, and every time I saw a Border Patrol vehicle parked, I pulled over and I went to talk to them. These guys weren't real excited to see me approaching their vehicle, but I had an 11-year-old kid with me. And they ended up opening up to me in just marvelous ways about what they do, about how they feel about what they do. It was very revealing. And then I made arrangements to speak to folks from two of the humanitarian organizations down there who work putting out food and water and clothing and blankets for these immigrants, and shoes. Shoes is one of the most important things they put up because these people have come walked hundreds of thousands of miles sometimes, and they've walked right out of their shoes. Their shoes are just shreds. So I set up interviews with these women, and when I went to interview them, they were a little surprised to see an 11-year-old kid with me. And they were at first reluctant to tell me some of the horrific stories of the things that they'd seen because I had an 11-year-old kid with me. But my grandson, honest to God, my grandson was so intelligent in the questions he asked them and so compassionate in his response to that, that these women just opened up their hearts and poured them out to us. So for so many reasons, the research I did for this book was among the most memorable for me of all the books I've done.
You have similar things in San Diego, right?
Pardon?
You have similar issues in San Diego.
Yeah, we do. We're
Terrain.
that close to the border. Yeah. I devoted a whole 6-book series to border wars, if you will. It was mostly guns and cash and drugs. Human trafficking was not a part of that series, but that's what you hear about most now. It's grabbing more of the headlines than drugs and guns, But yeah, I have a nice seat for that. I think where you live sometimes is kind of will give you things, give you stories. Where you live, you're kind of a part of it. Yeah.
What do you do? Now, we were talking about fences and keeping people out. In Jeff's book, it begins, in fact, in an institution where getting outside and trying to break out is a key factor. That's what gets Roland involved, right?
Yeah. That's how the story opens. Just in a quick and dirty, nutshell. The Room of White Fire is about Roland Ford. He's a PI, and first page of the book. No spoilers here. He is hired to find a troubled young man who has escaped from a high-end, very pricey, very private mental hospital in the hills of San Diego. And of course, complications ensue. And this is a book about escape, and we see very early on that the young man has a history. He's of war. He's in Iraq, and he served in the Air Force. And as soon as he vanishes from this hospital, some of the things that he said to his friends and doctors there, and some of the things that they find intercepting his emails and phone messages, indicate that he's up to something very, very important, but it's very vague about what's going on. It seems kind of dangerous, and it seems kind of vague. And Roland has to not only find this young guy, but he has to figure out, what the young man is up to. And as it turns out, Roland, being a veteran himself, begins to recognize himself in this young guy. They establish a texting and phone conversations long distance without meeting. And Roland tries to apply his own experience as a veteran to what this young man's going through.
So both of you put really interesting women in your books. We have Rainey in Sulfur Springs, and then other characters. And you have this absolutely amazing young girl in Room of White Fire. I like her a lot.
The psychiatrist or the teenager?
The teenager.
The teenager,
well,
yeah.
I like them both. But
Sequoia.
The teenager
I love
is really
that
a
name.
character.
Sequoia, thank you.
Sequoia, it's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, Sequoia is a 19-year-old girl who apparently, we find out quickly, again, no spoilers, we find out very quickly has apparently helped Clay, the young man, the troubled man in the mental hospital, has helped him escape, and she's with him right now. And Roland can't figure out if she's a hostage, or if she's an acolyte, or if she's a friend or a lover, or just what. So Sequoia's relationship to Clay is mysterious and fraught with all sorts of peril. And another thing that Roland has to do, of course, is to catch up with Clay, the young man, and keep him from any kind of harm to the girl. The girl seems to be having a pretty good time from what we can tell. So it's kind of an interesting situation.
But the psychiatrist is also an interesting woman. I
Oh,
thought. Yeah.
I know. But,
Aren't they all?
But over the course of your books, Kent, you've written, about Cork's daughter. You've written about both his wives. You've brought a lot of interesting female characters into your books as well. So do you enjoy, I'm not asking the right question.
Yeah, where are you going with
understand?
this?
I guess I was just trying to think, do you have any role models for any of these women, or do you just make them up?
I don't know about you, Jeff. You borrow a lot. I don't think I've I don't think I take anybody whole cloth from reality, but I do borrow a lot from strong women that I do know, and just like a good understanding of human nature in general helps us create the characters. But in my case, I was a member of a mystery writers critique group for 20 years, and half of my group were women. And as I began working with the series and creating my female characters, I love the fact that the women there would never let me get away with anything that was stupid. I mean, I can remember so many times that they would go, "Oh, Kent, that's what a man wants a woman to think or to do or to believe." No way. So they helped me fact check what a real woman thinks and does, and it was incredibly helpful to me. But also, I grew up. I have a sister. I had a sister and a mother and a wife, and I have a daughter. So I see a lot of. I have a lot of women who are very close to me, who have shared a lot with me, and so hopefully I've paid attention. And I honest to God don't know why the women in my stories take such hard things happen to them. I really can't tell you that. And I'm not even going to go there in my psyche. I don't think I want to know the answer to this one.
Point. Well, actually, I asked you the question because when I read your books, I never think about whether you're a man writing about women. I just think about I like your characters.
Oh, thank you.
You know, so I mean, I didn't have any agenda for the question, but I just thought it was interesting. And Jeff has always written about, California Girl, one of your 2 Edgar-winning novels. You've always written about women.
Yep. Well, like Kent, I benefited from a great, strong, wonderful mom and sister, and great women in my life surrounded by them. So I've never had any trouble, with that. The hard thing for me, I decided to write a series. It became a trilogy. It became 3 books, and it was about a youngish Orange County Sheriff's deputy detective, Mercy Rayborn, and she was very, very ambitious and very, very large and brusque and no-nonsense person. And when I sat down to write that, tell that story over her shoulder, she was my protagonist. She was my main character in that book. And as soon as I wrote the first page of that book, of the first Mercy Rayborn book, I realized that I was really kind of on thin ice because writing as a man, describing men and the way men might do something is second nature to me. But but as a woman might think and act and do, it's not. So I had to be very considerate about that, and I had to have the checklist that Kent had about am I saying, is she saying, doing, thinking the credible female thing at this point, and that doesn't invade every sentence of the book, but you have to ask yourself that question. So I was very careful with Mercy, and I think of all the characters that I've created, I think that she is one of the clearest and the most whole, most solidly put together characters that I've written, because I labored and I went slow to try to get her right.
I had the experience this summer of hosting Kathy Reichs, who created a very difficult woman, a damaged woman, in a book called 2 Nights. And then Peter Abraham, who's writing as Spencer Quinn, came along, and he had a very similar character that he wrote. So one was by Kathy, a woman, one was by Peter, a guy, and yet they were remarkably alike, for those of you who might have read those 2 books. And both of those women were, I don't want to say masculine, but they were more like Roland than they were, like Kinsey. Just, it was interesting to me as an exercise. Kathy might actually have been harder on Sunday night than Peter was on, I can't think of the name of the character at the moment. And I thought that was interesting, in terms of creating characters and all what you would draw on from your own experience.
But the truth of what we do, we're storytellers. We're all storytellers. And if you're going to deal with the world has 2 sexes. And you can't write just about men. if you're a guy and you can't write just about women, if you're female, so you have to learn how to write in a believable way.
Oh, that's true. But that's
You know what's harder for me than writing the women is
children?
No,
No.
I can write children. I raised 2, and I was one myself a long time ago.
Okay.
No, what's harder for me is to create the Ojibwe characters in my book, the native characters, because that is a culture that in the beginning was very foreign to me.
Yeah.
So I had to be very careful in doing that.
You know, we live here in Arizona where we have tribes that, you know, are more familiar to us, the Navajo and so forth. And reading your books really made me aware how similar kinds of things we deal with here are up on that Minnesota is a border state, just like Arizona. It just has a different population, you know, different tribes, but some of the commonalities. I think some of your best books have been, what's the one, it's called Red
Knife.
Red Knife.
Red Knife.
Was one of your darkest books.
Yeah, it was
really a hard-hitting book.
Well, and I wanted it to be. So if you're familiar with my series, you know that more often than not, there's a contemporary social issue that I feel really passionately about at the heart of it. And at the heart of that one was violence. The question of why, as a culture, are we so violent? Why, as a culture, do we pass down as a cultural norm, one generation to the next, that violence is an acceptable response when we're threatened or challenged? And so I knew it was going to be a hard book to write.
So, Kate, you've told us what you're working on, but Jeff, over the years that you and I have been together, you've never been a huge fan of writing series characters, although you did write 6 about Charlie Hood and a kind of whatever. So, are you intending to write more about Roland?
Yeah, I intend for him to be a series character, and I'm finishing up the next Roland Ford book right now. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I've never really gone into a series with complete conviction that it would last very long. I wrote 3 about Mercy, and I felt that I was done with her. I thought that her story had been told and told well. And I had Silent Joe knocking on my imagination, and I wanted to write that book. So I didn't write any more Mercy books. And then I wrote this Charlie Hood series. He was the sheriff's deputy attached to the ATF, and his story becomes the border story that I referenced earlier. And at the end of before the end of book 6, about the end of book 4, I was thinking, yeah, I got 2 more stories that I need to write about Charlie, and then I think he's going to need to go. He's going to need to. I'm going to need to leave him, and I'm going to have to go do something else. So I chose to do that. On this one, I've been a little more. What's the word? Hopefully, I've been a little smarter and a little more calculating in making Roland the kind of character that I am going to be able to move forward with and remain interested in on a go-forward basis. And if I am, then you guys will be too. You know. So I spent a lot of time. Just thinking of his name. I must have tried 1,000 names on this guy, and I finally got one I really liked, but somebody else already had it. Oh darn, that's a bummer. So then I switched it around. I finally got one that I liked, and then I spent a lot of time thinking about what he looks like and his history, and I kind of cobbled together this biography of Roland, so that I needed to provide him with a portfolio of skills that'll take him forward through these stories as a PI. He needs to be good at what he does, so he needs to be able to do certain things. Right. And he also needs to have a background that's deep enough and interesting enough that I can mine that and bring that deep background into the stories. Because any good story that you read or write, they move 2 directions at once. They go forward and they go backwards. And so the backwards is the backstory that I tried to create for him. And I spent a lot of time thinking about Roland before I wrote the first sentence of this book, because I wanted to have him down in some convincing way. I needed to know him well.
Well, it's definitely a more open-ended character, and when you wrote Silent Joe, which is still, of all your books, still my favorite, won him an Edgar and vast acclaim. There really wasn't another. You maybe could have stretched to write another book, but I thought Joe's story that was done.
Yeah, me too.
California Girl was an entity of itself. She said Mercy 3 books. And even Charlie Hood didn't seem to me necessarily a sustainable character across, some vast story arc. I was talking to Sue today, Sue Grafton, about, she's at book 25. That's a really dramatic achievement, to have gone all the way through and have one to go. But this is the first time I think I've read you, and I thought there was sort of an infinite series of possibilities,
Yeah.
with this guy.
Yeah, I'm writing a series. I'm going for it. I signed on full blast. It was funny because I decided I wanted to write a series after writing a couple of more just kind of mainstream fiction books, standalones. I wanted to write about a PI, but I didn't want anybody's ideas in my head at the time. So I told my agent, I said, Robert, I'm going to write a novel about a PI living in San Diego. And he goes, well, what do you think it's going to be about? I said, well, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you. He goes, okay, call me when it's done. And so I started writing. I had no contract. I had no editor. I had no publisher. It was just me. And I spent a year writing it. And when I was done, I'll tell you, I was petrified with fear. I thought, this better be good. This better be good. Because I was putting my all into this book. And I had shined on my whole team. I'd left my publisher. And I was keeping my agent in the dark. And it took a year writing this. And it was a very harrowing book. And so I finished it, and I sent it to Robert, the agent. He goes, oh, I love it. This is great. Do this, do that, do this, do that. A couple little things. I did them. And he goes, okay, I'm going to send it out. So he sent it out to 4 publishers on Monday morning. Electronically, they do it now, just electronic file, PDF file or whatever. He sent it out to 4 editors who publish this kind of book. And he said, these are the 4 guys I think should see it. And it was about 10 o'clock. Hit the send button. And at noon, 2 hours later, we had a call back from Mark Tavani at Putnam, who said, well, I'm halfway through it, but I'll tell you right now, if this book ends as good as it begins, I'm going to call you tomorrow and make an offer. So we sold the book in 2 hours. After a year of during which I was chewing my fingernails with it quick, hoping that I was making a book that they would like. So now I'm writing another one, and I have not only Robert, my agent's, his fingers in my gourd, but also Mark Tavani, who's a very, very strong, opinionated publisher, editor. He's a tough guy. So anyway, sparks flew on book number 2, and we got it under control now, and it's really quite good. I think you'll like it.
I hope you tell that story to lots of young writers who are worried about having a publisher and writing the right thing that's going to be the next time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they need to hear that what you do is you write what you want to write, and if you really do that, the rest follows.
I think that's the only place you can start. I really do. Sitting around trying to calculatedly figure out what you guys, what the reading public really wants, is not the right way to go, and so many people, I've been hearing for the past 3 years from, so many, even professionals, publishers and agents, give me the next Gone Girl, give me the next Gone Girl, and I go, oh, I love Gone Girl, but I can't write Gone Girl, I gotta write something else, because I'm me. So.
Well, what you really did was give him Gone Guy.
Gone Guy, I can live with Gone Guy.
That's a really good phrase. Well, I think, excuse me, that we should open this up for questions, or any of you who would like to ask either guy questions. Want to take over here?
Hi.
Was the hospital in your book based on any kind of fact at all, or did you just make that up?
Was the hospital in my book based on any real hospital, or I make it up? I made it up. It's an asymmetrical, jagged, modern architecture, glass, concrete, steel, and it's hidden up in those very steep hills near Palomar Observatory in North San Diego. If you've ever been up there, a lot of you probably have. It's real jagged country. It's real dense. A lot of dirt roads that twist and stuff up there. So this place is it's trying to be secret, and it's high end, and it's private. And Roland is not on campus very long. Chapter 1, again, not a spoiler to this place. It calls itself Arcadia, and he's not on campus in this hospital very long before he starts to wonder if it really is quite exactly what it's supposed to be. So, like any good noir, PI story, it's like, nothing is what it seems. Well, I love that cliche because it's fun, because the hospital is not what it seems. Thanks for asking, though.
You're just right there by Raymond Chandler territory. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's that La Jolla right up the road, right?
That's true.
Anyone else?
As a former Minnesotan, welcome to Scottsdale.
Thank you.
I've got a question about Cork. Will he be leaving Aurora more now that he's a PI and his family is grown, or is this just sort of a one-off situation where he comes to Arizona?
Yeah, and first of all, call me Kent. I go by my middle name. And so the question for those of you who didn't hear it is it my plan to have Cork go farther afield from Aurora, Minnesota again, or was this sort of a one-off? Yeah, it was sort of a one-off. One of the things that, Jeff really alluded to this, one of the things that's important when you're writing a series is to make sure you keep yourself interested. You try to make sure that you're not dealing with a stale place and stale characters and stale relationships. And Cork I've taken Cork out of the Great North Woods twice before. Wow, you're really good. I think I like you. Yeah. So I took him out in Copper River. He's in the UP of Michigan in that one. And I took him out in Heaven's Keep. He's in the Rocky Mountains. So I thought it was, it was time maybe to do something different with him. I wanted to make him a fish out of water. I wanted to take him someplace. So one of the things that readers expect from a Cork O'Connor novel is the Great North Woods, because that's really part of the shtick. And one of the things that I learned from Tony Hillerman's experience, was Tony Hillerman wrote one book that wasn't set in the Southwest, in the Joe Leaphorn Jim G series. I can't remember which one it was, but Leaphorn goes out to Washington, D.C. That book sold more poorly than any of the other Hillerman's books in that series, because people wanted Leaphorn there in the Southwest. So whenever I take Cork away from Aurora, I make sure that what challenges him in the new place is what would challenge him in Aurora, which is in large measure the environment itself. So in the North Woods, sometimes it's the winter, it's the isolation of the woods, it's the fast water, it's the cold of Lake Superior. All of these things that challenged Cork. So I thought, okay, wouldn't it be interesting to take him to the desert and see what challenges him there, that physical environment? How would he deal with an alien environment that he really has no idea about, as I did when I went down to do my research? So I found it just fascinating, and it was really refreshing. I hope that it's a refreshing change for readers. But I've just finished number 17 in the series. It's called Desolation Mountain, and Cork is back in the Great North Woods. He's back in the Arrowhead of Minnesota. And he'll stay there for at least 2 more books.
For such a small town, there's a lot of crime there.
What part of Minnesota did you grow up in? Did you St. Paul? Where in St. Paul?
North Oaks.
Okay. Oh, North Oaks, nothing. There's no crime in North Oaks. Grow up along University Avenue. That's a whole different thing. No. But that's true. And this is part of the contract that I think that writers in our genre have with readers. Yeah, I've killed off half Aurora, Minnesota. It's true. But if you're willing to let go of that and allow me to create an environment and a situation that time and time again feels real to you, then we'll do all right with each other.
But you've gone up to the Boundary Waters twice. You've been all over. You've been out on the lake. You've been.
Yeah, I try to give readers with each book a slightly different look at the Great North Woods. Right. So we've been into the Boundary Waters.
It's a big state that has a lot.
Oh, it's going the Great North Woods. We're talking a big area. So I've given them the Boundary Waters. I've given them the deep wounds of the iron mines up in my neck of the woods. I've taken them along the North Shore of Lake Superior, there along Kichigami. So yeah, I try to give readers different views of this place I call home.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And speaking of Minnesota, we have an author named Matt Goldman. He's an Emmy-winning TV guy, and he's written a great first novel, also a private eye novel, called Gone to Dust, which is set in Minneapolis. And he'll be here on Sunday, the 10th of September at 2 o'clock. And it has a great opening because the private eye is called to a crime scene, and there's a woman dead in a bed, and someone has emptied like 50 vacuum cleaner bags over her. Hence the title, meaning there can be no DNA evidence. There's no trace of whoever killed her. It's all in the dust, right? From the vacuum cleaner bags, and it goes on from there. I mean, he's a TV guy, so I'm not sure that vacuum cleaner bag dust is going to be a glamorous opening. But nonetheless, I thought I was saying, but he writes. It's in the winter, and he writes really well about Minneapolis.
Is he a Minnesota guy?
Yeah, they live partly in the Twin Cities and partly in Los Angeles. But I'm really looking forward. You haven't run across this book?
Not yet, but I'm looking forward to running into
It's
him.
really an interesting book. But I guess my point was there's so many aspects of Minnesota that you could write about. You can write. John Sanford, I've been reading his books forever. Although Virgil's recently been going down in Lucas into Iowa.
Yeah, he's
down
been going
to
south.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
And now that Lucas is a federal marshal, his last book he was chasing, southern bad guys, the Southern Mafia down in Louisiana. But Virgil is still, because he's not a super cop yet, he's still back in Minnesota. Anyway, we're lucky that we have a lot of authors, who are writing about your state. And
And nobody writes about Southern California.
I've got that all to myself.
I wasn't even going to go there, but at least, San Diego is not Los Angeles, even though they're kind of all paved together at this point.
No.
I still remember when you told me you were going to write about the tuna fishing fleet.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff has written about aspects of Southern California, not just trees and avocados and all, but the tuna fishing fleet, which was a very interesting story.
Thank you.
And
I've fun with
Portuguese
that.
roots, the Portuguese immigrants in San Diego
Yeah.
were the tuna fish guys. That
Yeah.
I was there. It's going to be a whole change in dynamic for me with Jeff, because every time he comes, I was always braced for something totally unexpected, like the tuna fleet, And
Well, you would always ask me. You say, when are you starting the series? Like it existed, and I just hadn't. I was the last one to know. When are you starting the series? What about a series? So now I got the series
That
going.
was only my inner commercial voice prompting me.
the inner commercial voice.
Jeff is one, two
Jeff,
Edgars
come on.
with no series, so there we go. And Ken,
Wait a
you
minute,
won the
3
whole-
Edgars.
Oh, that's right. There was a story, Edgar, right. I beg
Thanks,
your
Ken.
pardon.
Oh, I'm not jealous.
Hey, come on, you guys both pin medals on, He's got that weird-looking guy called Poe, which is a truly ugly statue. I have one of my own, and mine is there under slightly false pretenses. I edited a book that was nominated for an Edgar, and it didn't win. But then the Mystery Writers of America have very kindly given me all the awards they could do for a person who doesn't actually write a book. So one of them, no, I'm serious, it's really cute. There's the Raven, there's the Quill, whatever it is. But anyway, when I went to get the Raven Award, when I walked up on stage, I can't remember who was presenting it to me, Lee Child or somebody, they'd forgotten to order it. So they were so embarrassed, they gave me an Edgar. And then, so I took it home, and then about 9 months later, I got a note from Marjorie Flax that said, about that Edgar, we finally ordered the Raven. And I wrote back to her and I said, what Edgar is that? So I still have it. And I figured they couldn't get it together, not my fault. But that's why I know he's this weird looking little guy. He looks actually kind of the Hitler mustache and the kind of plastered down. Really, the Raven.
The prestige of an Edgar is terrific, but it really does look like something you get at a garage sale.
The Raven is actually much handsomer. They did send me the Raven finally, so I put them side by side because I couldn't figure out what to do with the Quill, which is for being an editor. They gave, and what's really embarrassing is that I got my Quill years ago. Neil Nyren, possibly one of the most prolific and best editors in New York, got his last year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
When I wrote to congratulate him, I thought, I wonder if I should mention this. I don't think I will. So you never know how it's all going to work out. Anyway, we've come to the part of our program. I don't see any more hands going up. Anybody have a final question before I cut you off? No. All right, we've come to the part of our program where, one, let's thank our authors for being here. Which is so wonderful. Thank you. And two, the authors and I really thank you, because if you didn't come, there would be hardly any point to this. So we are really grateful to you for coming out on a hot night. And three, we have a book to give away. And since we're starting